Welcome, everybody. My name is Mark Fisher to our channel, Scientology Peeling the Onion, and I'm here with my co-host, Janice Gillum-Grady. How you doing today, Janice?
Good, Mark. Good day, everybody. We have an interesting guest today that I have heard of him for years and years inside Scientology and outside, but amazingly, we'd never met or talked before. So I'm looking forward to this to see what he has to say.
That's right. I knew him. He was in Scientology and in the Sea organization. He was one of the most respected technical people, meaning people who delivered Scientology technology in Clearwater at the Flag Land Base, and also before that as well. And he eventually left Scientology, and we're going to let him tell his story about that. And then years later, his home was actually raided by law enforcement at the behest of the Religious Technology Center, and they took all of his computers and everything because they were looking for the confidential OT level materials and stuff. But anyway, he is now a minister. He helps people. He's not a Scientologist anymore, but he helps people recover from Scientology and deal with life and things like that. And we're really excited to have him here. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dennis Erlich. How you doing, Dennis?
Very good, Mark. And I want to thank all of you viewers for bothering to come and see me. I'm flattered.
Well, Dennis, you are our legendary believe me, you are, to anybody who was in Scientology at Clearwater in the Flag Land Base during those years. Everybody knew who Dennis Erlich was. Everybody knew who David Mayo was. Everybody knew you guys, and you had a tremendous respect from all the technical people as well as the public and staff. So I don't know the rest of your story, because when I finally left and went up to Gilman Hot Springs and went working for Miscavige and everything, we lost touch. But it's really great to have you here.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here, and someone taking an interest in me and my ideas. That's very flattering. But I don't consider myself, I'm a legend in my own mind, but I really wasn't. I really wasn't that person that you held up so high. For sure.
Well, let's get started at the beginning. You could briefly describe it, but how did you get into Scientology and to describe all of that, go ahead. That's how we usually start for our viewers.
I'll run it through quickly, step by step, but okay. I don't want to dwell on any particular thing too long. I've always been an outsider. I've never been part of really anything. And usually I was shoved far away. I started out, my mother didn't like me from the beginning, and she made it very clear to me. So going to school, I was always that guy over there that nobody could get along with, nobody could understand. They put me in a retarded class in junior high school because I just wasn't interested in anything. So I was that far out. When drugs came along, I just took that route. That's something I could see it's changing me, and I really wanted to be changed. So that went on for a while, and I had a family, a wife and two young girls, baby girls. And I was just going out of my mind, really, to deal with the stresses of being in a real family. It was just beyond me. So I was walking down Hollywood Boulevard one day, and the door was open, and somebody was beckoning me inside. And I had the one thing that makes people go into Scientology. From that door inside, they don't like something about themselves. It's not just that they want to change and be better. They actually don't like something about themselves, and they want to get rid of it. It's like an infected tooth. They're dealing with it that way. So they go to this dentist, and you think the door is open to them, and let's see what they have. Well, come here and sit down and sign your name. And okay, next you're going to go to, let me put you on a routing form. Next, you're going to go to here. After this lecture, you're going to be routed, and you're on a line. They're taking you through, and it establishes a real control on you, right? You're going to go along with this path you don't understand, but you're desperate, you know?
Yeah, people do just do what they're told.
Right. So from that point on, you're told sit there for 2 hours, don't say anything. No, that's like a teacher tells you that, your parents tell you that. Sit in the corner and don't say anything. Only this is for 2 hours. If you're willing to do that, you're willing to do anything they tell you.
How old were you then? How old were you then when you got?
I must have been, I don't know, maybe in my early 20s.
Okay.
So you came in through the Hollywood Test Center on Hollywood Boulevard?
No, it wasn't the test center then. It was just this little shop, really.
I understand.
And then I went down to the org in downtown LA, did the rest.
Okay.
And then you got trained up there at the organization in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
And then did you eventually? When did you end up joining the Sea organization and doing that route?
Well, I had a 2.5-year contract at Los Angeles, and when it was up, I guess I just signed up for the Sea Org, right?
Did your wife and 2 kids come in with you at that time?
No, they stayed. Of course, they stayed at home, and thank God. And they were raised by their mother. We were on good terms, and we'd go back and forth. When they grew up a little bit, they even came to Flag. One of my daughters signed a Sea Org contract. That's a whole other story of how she escaped, and I'll never live that down.
Wow.
You know. So.
What did it do for you? What did it do for you? I mean, obviously, you took to it. Obviously, at that time, what was it that, without getting personal? I mean, what attracted you to it?
I guess the sort of the supposed precision of it.
Me too.
That it's so precise that it can get into your head precisely and figure out what's wrong. It already knows what's wrong with you. So it's going to take you through those passages in your mind that are going to make you a better person. It's hard to resist if you're already sucked in the way you would have to be after going through their initial program.
Right. Yeah. And that was the same. I was 14 when I got in, but my dad got me in. My dad was 42, and he had read the Dynetics book. He was retired military. Like you said, he was searching, and he had gone into the organization in Washington, D.C., and he'd been doing services for a year before he ever thought to bring me in. And of course, I was, sophomore in high school, just getting started, didn't know my way around. But he said, I think this could really help you. And so I went into the communications course. But I got my first auditing intensive when I was 14, 15 years old. And they addressed exactly the problem that I was having in school and everywhere else immediately. And then I was hooked. And I was naive at 14, but I liked, like you said, if you do A, B, C, and D, you're going to get this result. Every time, that's what they tell you, right?
Yeah. It's a fascinating claim.
Yeah.
Too good to be true, for sure.
Yeah. So, how high up did you get trained, and then when did you end up in Clearwater, in Florida?
I was trained up to class 12, and I was in the organization, I was the highest correction officer. I was like anyway, I was the quality control engineer in a brainwashing factory.
How did you get that position? I mean, you started out obviously being an auditor, right? Processing pre-clears of people, right? And then who decided, hey, you'd do really well if you corrected people? How did that come about?
Well, that was way back in the beginning of my training when I had just graduated class 4. That's just this high on the training cycle. And I didn't know anything about auditing. I didn't know anything about what they do after graduating. So they asked me, do you want to work with people who are upset? That was the ARC break auditor that ever.
Right.
So I jumped into that. And of course, I didn't audit them. I sat and talked with them. Some of them I said, okay, take a walk. So I was comfortable with that. I felt I was helping the people who didn't need it. Yes.
Was that at LA Org, or was this now at Flag? At LA Org?
This was at LA Org in the very, very beginning of my adventure. So somebody was leaving a friend of mine was leaving the cramming post, and he said, hey, you want this post? And I thought, that's cool. I don't have to sit behind an e-meter. I can just talk to people and look things up. And okay, I took that post. And from then on, everybody knew I was a cramming officer.
Can you explain what a cramming officer is and does for our viewers?
Yeah, a cramming officer is, as I said before, is a quality control mechanism within the organization, and so I was the quality control officer, the highest one, and I fixed whoever needed fixing, so they were back on the exact path that. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to explain what that means is that, an auditor could be processing whatever you want to call them, a public person, right? And if the once that session was over, the actual folder would all get written up and would go to what was called a case supervisor, who was overseeing that auditing, that processing on that person, right? But if they spotted mistakes or things that the auditor had done that were contrary to what L. Ron Hubbard said to do in his bulletins, then they would write up what was called a cramming order, which was basically a correction for that auditor. And they would have to go see someone like Dennis, who would then find out, okay, well, what mistakes, were made, and look at here and all that. And then here's the policies or the bulletins that you violated. And let's find out Scientology's thought was always, oh, you've got misunderstood words somewhere in there. So you would have the person find their misunderstood words, get them to do whatever correction they needed. They get signed off on and back into the chair to do more processing. Did I sum that up pretty good?
Yeah, that's exactly it, Mark. That's exactly it. So I was the fix-it man for everybody who needed fixing. Go ahead.
Did you also do administrative people or just auditors?
No, I didn't want to have anything to do with administrative people, and they put that cramming officer in a completely different building, and that still wasn't far enough for me.
Okay.
Right, and then I used to have to do that because you remember authorization, verification, and correction. I was in charge of that unit, and the correction part, we had cramming officers who corrected managers on administrative technology from Hubbard that made mistakes. And so that's why I know about the whole cramming procedure.
Well, that was way up there. Your post, I considered your post way up there in the stratosphere because you were dealing with the copyrights and things.
I was dealing with everybody. I was dealing with Watchdog Committee members and messengers and you name it. Yeah. I mean, that was later. When I first met you, I was just a little lowly person in Clearwater. I was the LRH communicator over the estates organization for about 3 years. But then eventually I moved in. Yeah, and then eventually I moved into management because I had done the data series evaluators course. And I seemed to be the only person that understood it the way Hubbard wanted it understood. So then eventually I was an evaluator in management, and then eventually they entrusted me to actually approve all the evaluators and to train them. And so that's how I eventually ended up at Gilman Hot Springs. And then eventually, the last 6 years, I was chosen to head up David Miscavige's office, his personal office up there at the Golden Era Productions. And the rest is history. I left in 1990 after he beat me up, and I saw the writing on the wall and got out of there.
I bet you have a exit story too.
From yeah.
We all do.
We both do. But anyway, that was my sort of history with that. So you eventually came to Clearwater. You joined the Sea organization in Los Angeles or in Clearwater?
Right. I joined it in Los Angeles, and it was like, get on the airplane, we're sending you.
And then you were there, and then were you immediately put into cramming and qualifications, or did we?
No, I had to do the flag internships. I had to demonstrate that I knew the material, and then they put me over into cramming.
So you were a class 4 when you were put over in cramming, and then while being a cramming officer, you did the rest of the training levels?
Right.
Yeah, and then just so everybody knows, our viewers, a class 12 auditor, that's the highest training for a technical person in Scientology. They start at class 0 and go all the way up to class 12. And they deliver class 10, 11, and 12 auditors. They deliver these upper levels called the L rundowns, but they were only delivered at Flag in Clearwater at the time. And so Dennis had to correct the most highly trained Scientology auditors there were in the world. I mean, and these people, Dennis knows who they are. These were people who originally were trained by Hubbard and had been there for years and years and years. And so Dennis was the one who had to correct them on when they made mistakes, right, Dennis?
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a little story that elevated me to a higher position than Jeff Walker and Brian Livingston, who had both trained me and in Jeff's case abused me already.
I forgot about Jeff Walker. We have stories about Jeff. Go ahead.
Anyway, that's a whole story. Jeff and I are a whole story. So I had a point on Dianetic auditing, and I thought it meant one thing, and they thought they were teaching it the other way. I tried to explain to them that you're doing it wrong. You're interpreting this sentence wrong. And no. And they had taught hundreds of people this way and crammed them this way. So I wrote a query up to Hubbard. And the next, like an hour later, both Brian and Jeff were busted back to auditing, and somebody else was put on that. I was then the chief cramming officer, and I got Mike Eldridge was my junior. He was sat in front of me at his desk, and I sat behind, and I only crammed the upper level auditors from the HGC, and he did the rest.
Right. And there were a lot of auditors, but yeah, you dealt with the creme de la creme, as you would say. Did you also deal with David Mayo? Was he still the senior CS FSO at the time?
Yeah, I think I did one cramming off order on him. It obviously came down from Hubbard himself. Hubbard was still in the 11th floor of the Fort Harrison Hotel at that time. So, it happened that Mayo made a mistake and Hubbard sent it down to me or up to me. I can't remember. I think it was down. And then I crammed him. He did his little thing. I floated the needle and I said, bye-bye. I wrote up the order and sent it up line and like that. So it was just a routine thing.
Yeah, then you had a couple other people that we know really well. You had Jesse Prince worked with you, right? And then also Spike Bush. all these people that were Mike Eldridge and all, we know all these guys.
Yeah, well, Jesse was put on as my assistant cramming officer. It was kind of a weird situation, and
There's Jesse and you.
he was first of all, he was like the first black man who I had ever seen in Scientology, if I'm not mistaken.
There were a couple others, but yeah, there was Al Baker and Newton Taylor, and that was about it.
Yeah, well, Newton wasn't really, he was a performer, right. And
musician.
So Jesse just seemed to drop in to cramming and became my junior. I don't remember him ever being anywhere in the organization before. He's, oh, I'm your assistant cramming officer. And he did that for about 6 months. He was great. He was a great guy, nice to be with. And then he got an offer to go over what was called Over the Rainbow, which is
that's where we met him. Yeah.
Right. So he got an offer. I said, no, Jesse, don't do it, please. I said, look, we got a real comfortable thing going here. You know, we are not hassled. We could do this job, you know, for the next 10 years. It's so comfortable. So
yeah, I was going to say during that time period, that was during the Knots boom, you know, when Ned for OTs was released in 79 or whatever. And the flag service org just took off like a rocket, right? I mean, they went from making less than $1 million a week to making over $2 million a week in gross income. But then they were delivering huge amounts of processing and auditing, right? Am I right, Dennis?
It was rolling like a big machine. Everybody was doing the right thing and following the policy, and everything was, you know, more or less smooth unless the statistics went down, unless there was a bad drop in the number of things. And then there was punishment.
Yeah. Yeah, there was. There always has been.
Right. Well, you know, it's what's good as far as Hubbard was concerned, and it's what's bad as far as he was concerned. And that's we lived in that world, you know, okay, we're in the good guys part of his vision.
Now, how did you eventually leave? You eventually left. So I don't even remember what year it was. When was that? When you left the Sea Org. You left the Sea Org, sorry.
Yeah. I can remember this about it. I was sent to the RPF, or they attempted to send me to the RPF, right? And I just didn't go. I just wasn't going. So I went
Sounds
home.
Like Janice.
I went.
Janice refused to go too.
I went out to the housing that was out over the, you know, maybe 3 miles away. And I just was there.
In?
Yeah,
quality
exactly.
In. Yeah,
quality in. And we just sat. I just sat in my room for the next week, right? And nobody seemed to want to challenge me. And then they called me in, and I was sitting on the back steps of Flag, you know, facing the pool, and I can't remember his name, but Flag ethics officer was sitting.
Ron Anderson or
no,
Kip Hansen.
No.
Okay.
Anyway,
sorry, we're real good with names, so we just pop them out.
Yeah, that's fine. No, I'm not good with names. So
yeah,
we're sitting there, and he's saying, "You're going to the RPF," and I said, "No, I'm not." You know, well, we're going to declare you suppressive if you don't go. I said, hey, you got to do what you got to do, and I got to do what I got to do. So at that point, I sort of broke the bond of control. I said, you're not going to control me anymore. And at that point, that's like a whole opening up of life. You know, I'll go where I want from now on. You can't tell me anything anymore. And that's a that there's hard to describe what that does to a person. Maybe they don't even realize it at the time what's happening to them, but as soon as they throw those bonds off, I forget whose book that is that has the bonds, but as soon as you reject it,
Yeah.
and you completely reject it, they're not controlling you anymore.
Well, it's the prison of belief.
Exactly.
And that, yeah, you're in the prison of that belief. And I never got that title fully until years later. It suddenly clicked on me that it was your own belief that has imprisoned you.
Right. Well, I have a counter argument to that. You're not done with it at that point. You're just beginning the journey. And
Right.
getting rid of that thought or those actions is like a life. You could spend almost a lifetime doing it. It's so deeply ingrained in your personality. Can I give you an example?
Absolutely.
In my own life. We had a command voice, right? It was somebody speaking with such authority, you could not fail to do what he told you to do. I don't know whether you guys experienced it from somebody or were trained in it. Did you see it ever?
Oh, yeah. I grew up with it.
I see. So I definitely had that voice as a chief cramming officer. I had I had a way to say things that made people quiver with fear.
Right.
You were respected. Let's put it that way.
Well, I was respected for just that reason. If you give me any shit, I'll send you to the RPF.
Right.
Anyway, so go. What were we talking?
Well, I was going to say, so they were trying to send you the RPF and you wouldn't go. So did you end up leaving then? Is that what happened? Yeah,
I packed up, and to my own shame, I left my older daughter there to escape by herself. Did your wife come with you at the time too? When I left, yeah. My wife and my infant daughter, Holly.
And how old was your oldest daughter?
She was 16 or something. She was 15, 16 in that range. She had worked as my assistant in the cramming office and lived in a dormitory upstairs.
And she didn't want to leave?
I asked her. I can remember that moment. I was, we were talking by the car, and I said, you have your choice. You can stay here, or you can come with me. Come with us. Mm-hmm. And she didn't know what to choose. She didn't, So she said, well, I'll stay. And she did. And her escape was a harrowing experience. I think there's even an article about it. But, that's my shame. That is my shame, that I could leave my daughter in the hands of these people that I couldn't stand,
Right.
It still is a shame that I carry.
It was the same for me with my wife. I'd been married for 6 years, and we'd never had a problem ever, right? But when I decided that I wanted to leave, they basically turned her against me. And then I actually escaped 3 times, but I came back. The reason I escaped 3 times is because I kept coming back because I didn't want to leave her. And then it wasn't until I finally realized that she was completely staying, and there was no way she was coming with me. For my own sanity, I had to get out of there, and I ended up leaving. But I felt a tremendous amount of shame over that.
Mm. Well, my shame is that I brought my family in there and my daughters, and I don't blame them for not forgiving me. It's that kind of a situation. If anybody did that to me when I was growing up, I would really be pissed off at them, and they are at me. So, can't do anything except put it out there, my love for them, and hope that it it hooks them.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you left, and then what did you end up doing? Did you end up?
You want a list?
Well, yeah. I mean, did you continue doing what you were doing? Because I mean, like when we left, we were still of the viewpoint, oh well, Hubbard's going to come back and he'll sort this out. But then we started peeling the onion. That's why Janice came up with the name of our channel. Because after about a year or so, I started reading. At that time, there was no internet. Just started reading books about Hubbard, and then it just started to click for me that there's something wrong here that I was involved in.
Well, my life after that is a bunch of different things. I was a stockbroker. I was the buyer for a manufacturing company. I was a collector for a collection, assistant manager in a collection agency. I built and sold computers. I could go on still if I could remember. There's a whole list of things that I did. I learned about them, but I didn't do very well at them, enough to satisfy myself. And it's only since, let's say it's only since a lawsuit that I was involved in that I've been living comfortably, like a human being is living. I own my own house. It's been a blessing that I actually put myself forward in that position of being stomped into the ground by somebody. Anyway, are we done with flag?
Yeah, we're done with that.
No, we're not.
Go ahead.
I had a question, because as the senior cramming officer, you also crammed all the class 12s. And I know that there was one particular class 12 who ended up losing all his certs. And it's hard for me to realize that a class 12 would go so off the rails that they end up falling all the way to the bottom with a retread.
Well, that's a sad story that I could tell you. It really it tore me up at the time, and it'll probably tear other people up now. I hope it does, because it's so pitiful what happened. Yeah, this auditor, this class 12 auditor, he was always coming into cramming with his worksheet, and I would look at it and I would say, okay, did why did you do this? And he said, that's just that's a written error, and in the meantime, he's going like this with it, like he's pretending that there's an airplane. He's pretending that he's being an airplane, and he's just making the noise too. And while I'm sitting there trying to straighten him out, so he explains it away. And that's what I write on the cramming order and send it back. He didn't put it down in the worksheets that he. So this was my relationship with him over a long time, and he was just a kid almost. He was very young, or at least he acted very young, and he sort of floated around the place, and everybody kept away from him because he had a kind of aura around him as being higher up than anybody in the organization. So one day he comes into cramming with a cramming order, and it was all the same. And why did you do this, and so forth. He said, well, I false reported. And I said, like, what? You did what? Because
you just don't do that.
Yeah, false reporting means what? What's going to happen? So, it's automatically you take their certificates away, and they have to start all over if they're false reporting.
Right.
So I'm just flabbergasted. I'm like, oh my God, what's happening in my mind? What's happening here? He says, yeah, I false report on all my sessions.
Wow.
You know, I'm breathing this way, very consciously holding my breath. And I said, I can't remember saying anything after that. It was all blank. He left, and I wrote it up exactly what he said, that he's been false reporting in his worksheets, and I sent it up. It was out of my hands from that point, whatever happened.
Why would he false report in these worksheets? I mean, is it because he didn't know what he was doing and he'd make things up, or?
No, he knew exactly what he was supposed to be doing, but he didn't believe in it enough to actually do it, really, because he wasn't.
Wow. So he'd say he ran a process when he really didn't.
Exactly. Wow. So I sent the folder up, and he went off, this was his kind of vibe. He went off. Next day, I heard he was dead. Somewhere in the desert, something happened to him out in Nevada, someplace.
It was about a week later.
Whatever. Yeah. Jesus. In my mind, it just the next moment.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I crammed him, and then the next moment he's dead. And I guess that shook me up pretty good, because he was such a sweet soul. He didn't have any malice toward anybody that I could see. And I never saw him ruffled either. He was just calm. And anyway, that's a sad story. Let's get on to the good part.
Okay, let's do that.
Can we do one more story, but not about flag? Do you mind talking about, when Religious Technology had your house raided by law enforcement, what that was all about? I don't even know the details. You don't have to go into tremendous details, but basically what happened, because you're like one of the only people that's ever happened to, right? You and one other guy?
Yes, and I was the first. I'm sorry to say. Anyway, you want to know why they did it? You want to know how?
Yeah, well, I mean, what I heard was that somehow they were looking for people who were releasing the confidential OT levels on the internet. Is that what it was? I don't even know.
Well, more accurately, they knew exactly who was, because I had a scanner, and somebody sent me all of the OT3 material, the handwritten stuff, and all that. So I had a scanner. I scanned it in, and I posted it under my own name. I didn't pretend that it was somebody else, because I had been posting things. I would rip them out of the green volume and scan them and post them to the internet to win arguments about what they do, what they don't do. Because you
were basically a critic online before pretty much anybody else was. I mean, there was hardly anybody doing that.
Yeah, well, I was the first guy who broke the biggest rule that you could have in Scientology, which is to give the confidential material away.
Right.
Because that's where the bucks are.
Right.
Anyway, so
it's funny. I was going to tell you, I was really good friends with Vaughn Young. I don't know if you remember Vaughn Young, mm-hmm. Robert Vaughn Young, sure. But he was out in the 90s as well, and I was in touch with him. His wife Stacy was a really good friend of mine. But anyway, when those confidential materials went on the internet, he went, it's game over. He goes, they'll never get them back. It's just like, he goes, the internet's going to be Scientology's Waterloo, because it's like you're trying to plug holes in the dike by doing this stuff, but it's in the cyber universe. and it's never going to come back. You know what I mean? And that, you're right, that was the confidential, that was what anybody getting into Scientology, that was what their goal was to get up to these secret levels that you couldn't find out about till years later, you know?
But how did you even get the handwritten materials?
I believe they were sent to me. I thought it was Tom Clemensrud who had sent it to me. I forget whether it was digitally or it must have been digitally. I can't remember exactly how I got a hold of it, but anyway, so I had something. Go ahead.
But then they came and they actually, was it Religious Technology Center, which is Scientology, that's Miscavige's organization. They actually came and got law enforcement to raid your house, right? To take your hard drives, and what happened?
Well, you got it a little bit wrong. They got a judge, because it would be a minor judge. They got a judge to give them a writ of seizure. It's not a search warrant. It's a writ of seizure, which means you have made too many false CD copies of somebody's CD, and you have them in this garage, and the judge says, okay, you can go and get them. You can take them away. So the internet was a brand new thing at that time, right? And judges didn't know anything about it.
Yeah, this is the mid-90s. Yeah.
Yeah, so Scientology went to this judge. They probably already knew each other very well. And they got this writ of seizure to come in my house. So I wake up one morning and there's knocking at my doors, like 7 o'clock in the morning. And, I keep them outside as long as I can, telling them to go away or whatever the hell I told them. And finally, this Glendale policeman, that was the only law enforcement there was. There was maybe 7 or 8 people that were representing the cult. And
right.
So this Glendale policeman, you can see him in this picture. That's the only law enforcement there was. And, he said he was only there to stifle any violence. It was like, I only came along to shoot you if you
stop them.
Right. So I felt at that point, I'm a law-abiding citizen when I can't do anything else. So I let them in. And from there on, they just ransacked my house, took all of my computers, all of my discs, my porn videotapes. They didn't stop. They just didn't stop. So that was it. That was the famous Dennis Erlich raid. But I wanted to say something about what I did. Now, I don't want to blow it up higher than as a bigger thing that it is. But to me, I changed the course of history. That was as big a thing as a person could do. If I had let them, or if my law firm had let them get away with that, they would have controlled everything on the internet that could have been said about anybody if it was quoted. Right. They would have been in charge of it. They would have set a precedent. They would have stifled the internet at that point. So I figured at that point, I just took the shackles off of what the internet could be.
Because you took them on in court, right? Did you take them on in court after that raid and try and get your materials back? Is that what happened?
Well, you're making it sound like I took them on in court. Let me.
Well, I don't know. I'm just.
Yeah, no. I understand. But it wasn't. It's sort of, yes. I was on the other end of the case, but it's Morrison and Forrester, this law firm in San Francisco, who looked down upon me from the heavens, because they're the the second largest law firm in California. You know, they looked down at this guy being squashed, and they pulled me out of it. They said, okay, we're going to defend you. You don't have to do anything except show up when you're supposed to.
Wow.
And they said, go ahead.
No, I just said, wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's why I say, you know,
Yeah.
up there it's coming from. So yeah, they said, look, we're going to take you all the way with this. We're not going to let this go. So they put a pile of lawyers on it. And, you know, we're talking about top-notch lawyers. I could name them off and thank them, but they may not watch this video.
That's okay.
Anyway, they took it on. And once it was obvious that they weren't going to let go of it, and so forth, the law firm said, okay, you have a choice. You can end it here, or we'll take it all the way to the Supreme Court if we need you to. So thinking about what was in the balance, you know, these people had put hours and hours and hours into this case, you know, and it had to be taken away from other things. Right. So I figured that's enough. Let's settle this thing. Let's end it. Right. So nobody is spending anything more than they need to. And so that was what happened. And, you know, here I am. I survived it somehow.
Yeah.
Anyway, I say, you know.
Well, you did do a service in more ways than one by doing that. And trust me, I mean, the people that are watching this channel, I mean, you know, Dennis actually stood up, you know, having Scientology or come after you legally is not a fun proposition at all, you know.
All right,
we got fair gamed in other ways. We never were sued or had any legal stuff, but we had private investigators, you know, infiltrate us. We had people posing as our friends, all sorts of stuff. And we've had people try and ruin our lives. So we understand what it's like to stand up to that sort of thing. And we salute you, Dennis, for you know, having done that.
All right. Well, wait a minute. Let's back up a minute. I didn't feel comfortable when you said, "Oh, he was a legend. He was all this," and you know, everybody respected him. And all. I don't really feel comfortable in the position you're placing me in. You know, that's for me to decide, sort of where I am.
Okay.
On the giant scale.
Well, you can accept it or refuse it.
Well, no, I do accept it, and obviously, it's a wonderful thing to have my a sense of what's right and wrong validated in such a way that I'm rewarded for it. So I can't ask for anything more than that in life. You know, do your good deed, and things will turn out for you.
That's great. Now let's go ahead and move on to what you wanted to talk about how is it that the Scientology technology and policies entrap people and basically entrap them into this whole thing?
Well, it's not. It only starts from here and goes to here when the technology goes on and on and on, because you got to go on and on. You got to invent the next thing. Otherwise, people stop. You can't, you know, your revenue stops.
Right. Revenue stops. Like, hey.
So he was expert at coming up with something new for the next level. You know, after a certain point, it was all different kinds of exorcism. That's
right, we're talking about L. Ron Hubbard here. Go ahead.
Yes, L. Ron Hubbard. He just make up things to sell, right, which was a pretty good business. Anyway, his idea was to inflict the most control from the minute they walk in the door. So, like any huckster, 1,000 people are in the audience, and he's watching that one over there, and that's why he's carrying on this whole big charade, is because he wants that one right there. And the same thing is with Scientology. 1,000 people, 10,000 people walk past that door with the guy outside handing leaflets, and one goes in for each 10,000 that walk by. So they don't care if they don't get everybody. They just need that one in the crowd that's going to buy. So when you walk in the door, you're being controlled from that point on. And once you are, and you also learn how to control people, how to drag people across the room, how to give them explicit commands in such a tone of voice that they have no choice but to do what you say. There's a lot of control that you're subjected to, and you learn how to inflict control on others as you get more and more up the organization. You are stronger and you are more controlled. It's these two things sort of are what keep people going and going and going, because they're looking at, they're getting stronger, they're understanding something. And the other thing is pure suggestion. A person is told this is going to happen, and pretty soon, oh, you're going to have a win. Oh, I love that word. You're going to have a win. Okay, if you're told that's if you see over and over, that's the pattern. If you giggle, then you can get out of the session. If you, and lots of people do that just to get out of being in session. So it's all a different kind of control that's exerted from different points until you don't know the difference between reality, outside is reality, and what is going on in this bubble universe.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No,
I remember it's at St. Hill when I first arrived there as a kid. I grew up in a Scientology mission, and then we end up at St. Hill, and you bring up the win, and every time someone finished a grade or a course, it was announced to everyone, and they would tell their win of what they achieved on that course or with that process. So that fits in exactly with what you're saying.
It's almost like reinforcing, that control, you know what I mean? Because then you want to have those same wins,
Yes.
It's also a sales pitch, right? This is a built-in sales pitch every graduation.
Right. Well, let me ask you this though, because like I told you before, like I had, like you said, when you first come in, most people, when they come into Scientology, they have something they want to handle, or, they have a problem or whatever. At Scientology, they call it your ruin. We're going to handle your ruin. Right. But, I had things that I had wanted to deal with, and they were handled for me. Like I couldn't speak. I wouldn't have been able to do a show like this because I was so shy and introverted before. And now it's like I can talk to anybody, anytime, anywhere, and I have for years. And I haven't had Scientology processing in 35 years. You know what I mean? So there had to be some benefit to some degree. Right. But then, like you said, it then just fed into the control because they then want to control you in your life. Right.
Yeah. I'll tell you a funny story about that. Actually, not funny, but it's illustrative of what you're talking about. At Flag, I had somebody I was counseling when I was auditing class 12. And I can tell you who it is because she's public about it. Olivia Coringa, you know her? No,
I don't.
That's okay.
Well, she was a get on my friends list then, and you'll know her. She's a good friend of mine. Anyway, she swears that the sessions I gave her changed her life completely. Right. Geez, that's a wonderful compliment anybody can give me, whether I believe in how I did it or not. So the joke was, yeah, that just being in my presence for that long is what people achieve. That was my joke about that.
Oh, is
Anyway,
that Knox Martin's daughter? Okay, I
exactly,
know who. Yeah.
exactly,
Okay.
exactly. Anyway, I got to have fun with it now, because if I get serious, I mean, I have been serious about it for how many years? And you guys know that I had a seizure so bad that I lost my complete memory. I didn't know my
Oh, I
name.
didn't know
I
that.
did not know that.
Yeah. Well, that was about 2 years ago. And I've had to rebuild my brain from there. And it's been kind of thrilling and painful at the same time. So anyway, I'm a completely different person as a result of that. And I feel completely different about other people and where I'm at. I like appreciate everybody and everything all the
Right.
time.
No,
It's
I'm the same way. I'm the same way. Like I'm not angry about people anymore. Do you know what I mean? I'm accepting of people. I have been since I got into Scientology, but then afterwards, it's just like I've been screwed over many times. I'm not trying to be a victim, right? But I don't ever hold like this tremendous grudge. You know what I mean? I just sort of go, all right, I messed up there. I'm just going to move on. You know what I mean? I'm just going to move
Yeah.
on and do something else. I don't hold on to things. And I don't know if that came from Scientology or if it's just my basic innate personality. I just don't know.
Well, it's certainly healthy that way. That's definitely the healthy way to deal with things.
Well, and then afterwards too, some of it's spirituality. I don't know if you're spiritual. I mean, you're a minister. I'm sure you are. But after I left Scientology, my dad had got all the way up to old OT7, and then he got declared in 1978. I had to disconnect from him for 10 years, right? But anyway, when I got back out, he got into some other spiritual things and stuff like that. And I read some books of some of the things. He goes, "You're going to like this. It's very similar to the way Scientology is, very Eastern type of stuff." And it explained some things to me too. And it kind of explained for me that, Hubbard always said, "Oh, I took things from different areas." And sometimes he just lied and said he didn't when he did. But, I have a very strong spiritual belief in myself as a spiritual being. And that's kind of guided me along. I don't know about you. How do you feel about things like that?
Well, let me put it this way. I didn't create myself.
Right.
I didn't create myself.
No.
There's no way I did. So I have and I came very close to death with this seizure that I had.
Mm-hmm.
So I have this sense that I have this precious gift that I can only use for a little while longer. And right now I'm getting something out of every bit of it. I have sensations of what's around me. I have feelings that anyway, this is my life now. My thoughts are very, very loud in my head, and I can't ignore them because every second is precious to me.
Right.
I don't know what that you asked me about my spirituality. I couldn't have made it through all of this that I have made it through in this life without some force having given me the path or opened the path for me. So I have no doubt that I have a maker.
Right.
And my maker is watching over me. So that's at the extent of my spirituality. The other part is that I believe that marijuana is a sacrament of my religious practice because it brings me closer to God. Okay. So that's the whole story.
Okay, good. I was going to say, what do you do now? You said you do ministering or counseling, or what do you do now with other people?
Well, I'm mostly on the internet and people on the phone and so there's a lot of guidance and if you speak truth to these people, as they come out, it gives them an easier step, the next step that they have to make. You know, I've counseled people on the verge of telling their friends, right, or letting it be known that they're no longer a Scientologist. And how do you make that moment easy for them?
Right.
And so I've done that kind of thing with people.
How do these people find you? Like if they're in Scientology and they want to leave or try and figure things out, how do they find you for that counseling?
Well, I'm not a big advertiser. I mean, people know my name, as you said, and I'm not looking for a large following, if you know what I mean. I'm not looking for clicks. I'm not looking for any of those
Right.
things. People either are magnetized to reach out or come to me, or they're not. You know, at this point, I'm
Okay.
not trying to grab people to be part of anything.
If
Right.
anybody wants to reach out that's watching this show, I mean, can we put like your email address in the description or anything like that? Or
Sure.
Yeah. So after we get off the show, I'll get it and then we'll put it in the description down below. So anybody, if you want to contact Dennis or whatever, just go down the description and his contact information will be there.
Great. And you know, I'll try to be helpful to everyone who contacts me.
That's great. That's great.
Good.
Okay, well, this is a good point to end off because we're right here at an hour, if that's all right with you, Dennis.
I think it's great. You guys did a good job of drawing the real Dennis out, and I appreciate it. Anytime.
No, I've enjoyed it.
Good.
I mean,
Yeah.
Dennis, I've enjoyed it because, like I said, you know, you were well known in my history in terms of what my memories, and it's just the first time I've ever had a chance to really talk to you in depth, and I really got something out of it. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, I never knew you. I knew of you. I'd heard of you, but I'd never talked with you. So that was great.
Well, I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, I did. I very much enjoy people being interested in me.
Yeah.
That's one of the joys of my life.
And Dennis, I don't know if you've seen much of our channel. It's okay if you haven't, but the whole reason we're doing this is to basically fill in the history of Scientology and the Sea Organization, because you know as well as anybody else that the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing in Scientology. So like you could be being a tech cramming officer, but then something happens, you have no idea why that happened. So we're getting people on here to tell stories, and it's filling in the gaps for a lot of people in terms of, oh, well, that's why that happened to me, or this is what was going on. So we tell that. Plus, we also let people tell their stories so that they can unburden themselves. And then also we tell the stories of abuse, people who were abused, things that we never knew about, and we let them tell them as well. And then just like you said, those OT materials are out in the cyber universe or whatever. These stories are out in the cyber universe. You know, Miscavige, they can never stop them. They're out there forever. And so we haven't been challenged on anything, and all of our guests have done a great job. So that's why we do this.
Yeah, it's a great thing you're doing, and I hope I filled in a little of what happened, why it happened, and so forth. If I can just contribute that, then I feel like I've done something major.
That's great, Dennis. Good. Well, go ahead. So I'm just going to tell everybody, do some business here. Please subscribe to our channel if you're interested in more stories like this with Dennis and some of the other stuff that we have going on. Just hit that subscribe button and also hit that like button. It really helps us get the word out to other people. You rock slam
it.
Yeah, Janice likes to say rock slam that like button. There we go. If you have any questions or comments on this video or anything else, go down to the comment section, write out your comment, write your question if you have a question for Dennis or anything like that, and we'll try and get it to him and get those answered. But we really appreciate that as well. And if you'd like to donate to our channel, you can buy us a coffee. There's a link down in the description. You click on that. You can buy us 1, 2, 3, 5 coffees, whatever. It's just a way to support the channel. And if you're interested in that, we really appreciate all of the support. And finally, if you'd like to be a member of our channel, just hit that join button. It's right next to the subscribe on your laptop or your computer. You can hit there. There's a video that tells you about different membership levels that we have. You can click on that. That's another way that you can support us and our channel. Janice and Dennis, have you got anything else you'd like to say before we end this show?
Hey, thank you for watching. Thank you for being interested. And geez, that's about it.
Okay, Dennis. Well, we'll see you on the other side. Okay.
Yep.
I'm going to play the video. Bye-bye, everybody. We'll see you next time.